Welcome to the Cigar Rebel community, where indulgence meets authenticity. This is more than a podcast. It's a gathering place for those who savor life's luxuries with unapologetic passion. Here we celebrate the fine art of living through rich flavors, bold spirits, exquisite cigars, and unforgettable experiences.
Welcome, Cigar Rebels, to the podcast. I'm Mel.
And I'm Kevin, and we're coming to you live tonight with the topic of cigar terminology that you should know.
Absolutely. So welcome to everyone again, new and old, that are tuning in tonight. And as Kevin mentioned, we are doing cigar terminology today. So if you've ever been in a lounge and you have heard some terms like Robusto or retrohale or Vitola, and you don't know what those mean, this is going to be the podcast for you. So it's going to be great whether you are a new cigar smoker or even a veteran. You might learn some new terms tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. By the end of this episode, you're going to be able to walk away with some vocabulary that will not only make you feel more comfortable when you visit a shop or a lounge, but might learn something and be a little bit of an aficionado.
Yeah.
So what we're going to really talk about tonight is the roadmap of a cigar. We'll start with the anatomy of cigar, then we're going to talk about the sizes and shapes, and then kind of move on to the strength, covering kind of smoking techniques and storage, how to cut and light, and then some problems you might encounter along the way.
Yeah. So before we do all of that, let's talk about what we're smoking tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
So go ahead.
Go
Want to
for
get that graphic up for them. We are doing the 2025 Quesada Oktoberfest Kaiser Ludwig.
Yeah.
I think I said that right?
What a word. Yeah,
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're smoking this gorgeous cigar tonight. This is the 2025 release.
Yep, and it has a San Andreas wrapper, a Dominican binder, and then Dominican fillers. So super excited to go ahead and light this up.
Yeah, absolutely. So while Mel's doing a cold draw, this particular cigar is released once a year. This year they've released 5 different Vitolas with a 10 cigar box or a 10 count box. And there's only about 500 of each of these sizes made. So very limited run. We're excited that we have some of these releasing very soon at Story Cigars and Lounge.
Yeah.
And we're excited we're going to get to smoke it tonight before the release that's actually on Friday nationally.
Yeah, and I think this cigar, if you enjoy a beer, this is a great cigar to pair with it. And if you don't enjoy beer, I don't drink a lot of beer, and I know you drink close to no beer ever. Maybe a sip a year.
Maybe a sip here or there.
I'm excited still, even though I'm not a beer drinker, to go ahead and have this. Just off the cold draw a little bit, I'm getting some earthiness, a little bit maybe of a little like spicy earth maybe.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with the spicy earth there. It's definitely a mild cigar on the cold draw.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning all the flavors are there, but they're very mild. But let's light this up and really see where it takes us.
Okay.
Sorry, clicking the wrong things here. All right, our lighting's brought to you tonight by Big Sky.
Back in 1905, under Montana skies, 100 satin factories rolled smoke for a wise. Reminders of ranchers, life, one and grin. Now Big Sky Cigars bringing that spirit back in.
Yellowstone River to the bold bighorn flow. Madison, Beirut, Blackfoot, we know. And leave from Nicaragua, San Andreas to the Ecuador rolled up.
And every box sold helps our veterans mend. With warriors and quiet waters, we lend a friend's hand. It's heritage burning in every draw. Big Sky Cigars, Montana's pride and law. Big Sky Cigar, where heritage flows with every draw. Find your rare red Big Sky cigar to pop.
Ask your local tobacconist about Big Sky cigars today. If they do not carry them, shops can reach out to Brad Frazier to set up new accounts.
As always, thank you to Big Sky for sponsoring the lighting of our cigar. And so for our cigar, let's dive into it, our cigar topic today. And it's I think we got to start with the actual anatomy of a cigar. I think that's a perfect place to start.
Absolutely. Let me put the graphic up just as you walk through it for people. Kevin Langston had said he loved San Andreas. I love San Andreas as well, and the natural and the Maduro. This is the natural, and it is excellent so far, the first couple of draws. And so there was a graphic for you.
Yeah, so first we're going to have that wrapper. That is going to be the outer leaf on there, and it is not just for looks like some people would think. This is also going to contribute to the flavor of the cigar. Of course, we've talked about previously how much of the flavor, I think, depends on your personal palate and what you might even be biased towards.
Yep, absolutely. As well as the Vitola of the cigar. You know, the larger Vitola you get, and we're talking about Vitolas here in a little bit, but the larger you get, the more and more fillers there that might really impact the flavor. And so it's definitely something to think about. And so looking here at the graphic, you have the wrapper, which is the outside. Then you have the binder, which is the next piece, and Mel's going to walk us through that here in a second. And then the filler being the middle. I just want to give you a real quick glimpse here before we run through those.
Yeah, so the binder is going to kind of be the glue that is going to hold all of the fillers together in the cigar for you. And then the fillers are going to be just a different conglomerate of leaves, usually like Viso or Seco, Lajero, and those are going to contribute flavors as well, and also to the burn of the cigar.
Yep, absolutely. And so once you talk about the binder and filler, and looking here at this graphic, you have the binder, the filler, and the wrapper on that cigar, the wrapper being the dress or the finishing. Next, let's talk about the cigar structure. So you have on the far left side, you can see the cap or the head and the shoulder. The cap is what really kind of finishes off the cigar, and it's just here at the top, and it really makes sure that everything is there. And a lot of times you're cutting the majority of that cap off when you're cutting your cigar, unless you're using a bullet punch, then you're just kind of punching a hole in it. The shoulder on the part of the cigar is really the part that holds the rest of the cigar together. It's make sure that the wrapper doesn't unravel on you. If you've ever cut your cigar down too deep and you've cut down into or past the shoulder, you'll have a cigar that starts to really kind of unravel on you. It happened to me earlier today. I was working on the deck and I cut a cigar and I wasn't paying attention, and I wasn't using a perfect cut, so I cut a little too far and immediately it started wrapping. Luckily, we have some cigar glue, so I just went inside and kind of glued it real quick, and it was just fine. I had no problem smoking that. But then when we look here on the screen, you'll also see you have the cap, and then you have the shoulders. You can see there the long distance of the cigar is called the barrel, or in the top, some people refer to the head, the body, and the foot of the cigar. When you're talking about a cigar, when you start reading different articles about them, or someone's talking about the size, the length of a cigar, Mel, as we both know, is measured in inches, while the ring gauge, which is how round or thick the cigar is measured in 64ths of an inch. I'm not sure exactly why or who decided a 64th of an inch was the right way to measure that, but that really is what it is. So on this one here is 46, so this was a 6x46, so this is 46 64ths of an inch that we're smoking here tonight. So that's a little bit of understanding just to start to understand the cigar. You have the wrapper, the binder, and the filler. And then here you have the head, the body, and the foot, where on the head you have the cap and the shoulder, and really the body and the foot make up the barrel of the cigar.
And I will say, so a little funny story, when I first started smoking a lot of cigars and learning the terminologies, the blendings, I would listen to people talking on podcasts about the ring gauge. And I would always think of, when you go get your like finger size for a ring. Yeah. And so at one point someone was talking about this is a 64 ring gauge. And so I'm thinking sizes, like my ring is a size 5.5. And I'm like, oh my gosh, 64 ring gauge. And I didn't know if they were talking about their own fingers or cigars or what. And so I remember I asked you one time and you explained it to me. And I still didn't get it, but I was like, okay. And then one day it clicked in and it all made sense. But So yeah, if you ever hear huge ring gauge, they're not necessarily talking about their fingers or
Yeah,
like if you
absolutely.
would go to a jeweler's. So
Well, before we move on real quick, let's check it on the cigar. What are you thinking about this? We're just maybe a quarter of an inch to half inch in. The ash is very salt and peppery on mine, but definitely sturdy. It's just a little bit there, but the aroma on this cigar is exceptional.
yeah, I would say it is. I'm waiting for some more extreme or stronger flavors,
Okay.
but just off of what I've had so far, which is just this little bit here, I get a little bit of maybe some breadiness or something, not necessarily bread, but maybe like a toasted crumb or
Okay.
something
Yeah,
along
I could
those
see
lines.
that. So
Some
this has a
earthiness.
very traditional San Andreas flavor. If you like San Andreas wrappers or tobacco, you're going to love the cigar just on the first few draws. However, it is a little more muted than I remember the 2024.
Yeah.
The 2024 was kind of launched immediately. I feel like this is a cigar that's going to build based on what
Yeah.
we're doing. I'm not picking up much spice. There is a definitely strong, I would almost call a rye when you're talking about
Yeah.
breadiness.
Yep.
It's a strong rye kind of flavor. You talked about drinking it with beer. If you love a good IPA or something that's very hoppy,
Yeah.
I'm not a beer person, but I think this would pair very, very well with that. On a bourbon side, which I don't have any bourbon with us tonight, I would really think a rye bourbon, a high
Yeah.
rye would go well.
I could see that.
I'm pairing tonight with just an unsweet tea, which is a perfect pairing for this. It's going really well together.
That's awesome. I'm just having water, so I'm being boring tonight.
Yeah.
Just staying hydrated.
Yeah, well, this heat's been a little this
It's been weird.
last few days.
Hasn't
Yeah,
been- No
Very
heat
cool
the
days and
last
very
couple
warm
days,
today.
and today it's an adjustment.
absolutely. So
So-
let's jump back into the
Yeah.
topic. As we do, if you are watching live tonight, go ahead and comment what you're smoking, what you're pairing with it. And then if you're watching on the replay, as always, go ahead and do #ReplayFam and let us know you've tuned in.
Mhm.
So let's talk about cigar primings
Yep.
and tobacco leaf.
Yes. So the primings, that is where the leaf kind of grew on the plant. So Kevin put this graphic up just in case you're super visual like I am. You can see Ligero leaves at the top are going to be stronger. The Seco in the middle is going to be more balanced and a little bit more aromatic. And then Velato at the bottom is mild, but it helps contribute to the burn and burns really well.
Yeah, and one of the real quick things you can see, Mel didn't go over Viso that's listed on this leaf. And the reason why is in the industry over the last few years, fewer and fewer people are really using the term Viso. They're starting to talk about how it is a legacy or an old school, and it's really not used anymore. What I find really funny about that, and we talked about this on an episode 5 weeks ago maybe, and when we've done cigar schools at cigar shops, we talk about it, is people don't want to use Viso, but they use the upper Seco and the lower Seco.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's really the Viso and the Seco. And so as we look at that, that really is that overall structure that you have on the plant. In a lot of our 3-blend cigars, like the Velvet Smooth or Velvet Spice, LSA, which is the Lone Star Attitude, when you're looking at that, we're using Seco, Viso, and Ligero. We do not use really any Velato in any of our cigars. We do use a little bit of Velato in a couple of them. It really is just to add filler without really impacting the overall flavor of the cigar, but helps it burn.
Yeah. And I think it's great to see on here, especially on the plant, to kind of help if you are confused at all. This is kind of the recipe for the cigar. So when you start seeing Ligero, Viso, if you see that on there, upper, lower Seco, regular Seco, Velato in there, that's really the recipe. So you can start looking at, oh, this cigar has this part of the leaf in it or this part of the plant in it. And that's really helpful. I think it helps click in when you're looking and smoking a cigar.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you've ever wondered what a tobacco plant looks like, this is what it looks like. Moving on to sizes and shapes or vitolas. So vitolas really are kind of the shape of the cigar, the size of the cigar, and there is a plethora of them out there. And one of the things to know, and we really want you to be aware of, is when you walk into a cigar shop, there are some common names used. However, different cigar companies will use different names.
Yes.
So go in and ask for the traditional size. And if it's a company that uses a weird size like Roma Craft or even Perdomo, who uses a different naming structure, the tobacconist should know that and still be able to point you in the right direction. And so Mel's going to talk to us a little bit about what those different sizes are.
So the most common category is going to be Parejos, and that is a straight-sided cigar, which is like a Robusto, a Corona, or a Churchill. So an example would be a Robusto is normally 5 inches by 50 ring gauge, and it's a great starter size if you are just getting into cigars, or it might be your favorite if you've been smoking cigars for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody came into the shop earlier today. I was up front grabbing some cigars for a photo shoot that we're doing tomorrow. And as we were looking at those, someone came in, they were interested in their first cigar, and they were buying a cigar for someone else's first cigar, and they want something infused for them. And so we're able to grab them the Tabac Dolce in a Robusto, which is more of a coffee infused espresso, very mild. But that Robusto is a great starter size. Something like this in the Corona also, or Petite Corona, which is this size but about half the length, is also a great first cigar.
Yeah.
Personally, I love smoking Coronas and Robustos. What is your favorite size, Mel?
So I really enjoy Robustos, Coronas, and Petite Coronas. Those are probably my 3 top favorites if I was choosing a size for me. So
yeah, in that traditional Corona, that 6x44 through 46 ring gauge is really my favorite size. Like smoking the Red Anchor is another cigar. They've got 4 or 5 different vitolas in their Red Anchor line, but the Gunner, which is a traditional Corona 6x46, is spectacular.
100%. I agree with that.
So next, when you're looking at cigars, you have the Parejos, which is kind of that normal round cigar in those different sizes. Then you've also got Figurados. And Figurados are really the unusual shapes. Think like Torpedos or Perfectos or Bellicosos. All of those are different cigars. And basically what the Figurado means is at the top of your cigar, it's going to taper in at some level. Also, some people will begin to talk about the boxed press kind of fits into the Figurado. I don't really feel that that's the case because I think it doesn't really fit into Figurado, and it doesn't really fit into Parejos in the round shape.
It's its own. It could be its own category of its own, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with you. It definitely can be its own thing, completely different. In recent years, though, there's been this growth movement of Gordos. And really, Gordos are a fat ring gauge cigar. As the industry's kind of transition, they've really kind of settled in on the 6 inches by 60 ring gauge, so it's 60/64 of an inch round, which means it's a pretty stout cigar. However, you have some companies like Asylum that has gone a 7x70, an 8x80, a 9x90, and then they did have their April Fools, which was a 10x100, which is a huge cigar.
Yeah.
We definitely had somebody recently smoke one of those at one of our poker nights. As a matter of fact, it was Kevin Langston who's commented just now, and that thing was absolutely humongous. Mm-hmm. For the grand opening of Story Cigars and Lounge, Mel and I made a 8x80 that we gave away. That was a lot of fun, and then the person who won that actually ended up smoking it at our 1-year anniversary. So we gave it away our first day.
Yeah.
They smoked it on our 1-year anniversary, which was an awesome thing to do. But Gordos are really that larger cigar, giving you a larger or longer smoke time. However, depending on the type of tobacco they're using, I've had several Gordos recently that are smoking in that same timeline as a Toro that 60 to 75, maybe 90-minute smoke. And I think that really is dependent on the tobacco that they're using in there. On the other end of the spectrum, something that's really kind of gone away is the Lancero, which is a tiny cigar. They're typically considered thin, elegant cigars that really showcase the wrapper. And then the next stage above that is the Lonsdale. Matter of fact, Ohana Noir just came out with their toasted marshmallow for 2025, and they introduced, instead of just the petite 4x44, they've actually now introduced the Lonsdale, which is almost, it's like a 6.5 by like 45, 46. I can't remember the specific specifications, but pretty small, smokes great.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of different sizes when you're talking about a round cigar, a cigar at the top like a pyramid or a torpedo, and of course the Gordo and Lancero.
Yeah, and so something also to keep in mind, which I think is a super helpful tip, is the size of the cigar is going to impact the cigar overall. So not all sizes are going to have the same flavors, the same everything in it. So it can change the burn or the strength perception and how the cigar even feels in your hand, maybe even how you smoke it a little bit. It will feel different, to your lips, to your palate. And it's really fun if you have a favorite cigar that is in multiple sizes. If you have the opportunity, go into your lounge, ask the tobacconist or see if they have that in a different size, and you can see kind of the differences. You may love it more or love it less than your favorite.
Absolutely. So one of the things that is fun to do is try different sizes. If you're a new cigar smoker, you should try a cigar in each of the sizes to begin to learn what is the right feel that you enjoy. What size do you want to have from a mouth feel to holding the cigar? And then also, even if you're an experienced smoker, you've been smoking for a long time, it's good to try and make sure that your preference hasn't changed. Another really great and fun thing to do, and something we're actually going to do at one of our lounges, and we're actually going to do it at another lounge as an event here coming up soon, is smoking the same cigar in different vitolas. And really take that cigar and say, call it like a Perdomo BBA Habano, right? Bourbon barrel aged Habano. Getting that in a Robusto, in a Toro, and then in a Figurado. And smoking all three and see which one is your favorite.
Yeah.
Because no matter how great the blender, there are small, subtle differences between those cigars. Now, with some cigar companies, there's large differences. In Perdomo, you'll find very mild differences when smoking it. And also in cigars like the McAuliffe Purple, for example. The Robusto is an excellent cigar, but the Torpedo smokes so much better. The Toro in that smokes so much better for the McAuliffe Purple. And so that's one of those areas where I really enjoy the Toro a lot better in it, whereas in the black or the red, I feel like the Robusto is my favorite.
Yeah.
And so yours might be different in a different size than you're normally smoking. And so it's a great opportunity to try those different sizes to figure out which one is your preference.
Yeah, and you can always ask, what vitolas do you have these in? If you want to use one of these terms we're talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now we will get to some more good stuff, which is going to be tasting notes and flavors of cigars. So you're going to hear the terms body and strength a lot, and I think it's good to point out the differences in those terms. Body is going to refer to the fullness of the flavor in your mouth. Strength is going to be about the nicotine impact or the kick of the cigar. So a cigar can be mild in body but strong in nicotine, or vice versa. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. Flavor notes are going to be kind of what Kevin and I were talking about for this cold draw, and for now that we're a little bit more into it. Is it cedar? Is it leather? I mentioned bread. You mentioned
the rye.
The rye. There's leather, earth, saltiness. Some people can drill down really far and get like sauteed green bell
Yeah.
pepper or something like
so
that.
there's baking spices, there's saltiness, there's savory, there's sweet. You can pick up hay. Some people call it barnyard, and I really talk about hay and barnyard in my mind. Barnyard is more of that kind of manure-y type of smell that you get when a field has just been fertilized, versus a sweet hay being that finished product. And so there's those different flavors that are out there. Hanging out on body for just a second, one of the unique things when smoking a cigar is the body of that cigar, which is the flavor and the forwardness and the boldness of it as a whole. Almost the flavor intensity is what really defines the body. We have a lot of people that go, man, this is a really strong cigar. And really what they're really doing is they are really focused in on the flavor, not the strength. And then there are times where someone goes, man, this is a really mild cigar because it doesn't have a lot of flavor. But however, there's a very high nicotine, which really becomes an issue along the way.
Yeah, 100%. And then also we can talk about the draw of the cigar.
Absolutely. So the draw of the cigar is the amount of airflow that goes through the cigar, how easy it is or how difficult it is to draw through the cigar. So one of the things with draw is you really don't want a really light draw where you're getting a ton of air. You also do not want a difficult draw where it's really difficult to actually get through. If a cigar doesn't draw well, it's really tough to be smoking that cigar. And it's actually one of the few times I'll put a cigar down is I just cannot get it to draw. I can make it through a flavor I don't love. I can make it through a cigar that's just smoking okay that I got to keep relighting. But if it doesn't draw, it's really brutal. A good draw should feel natural, not like you're sucking a milkshake through a regular straw, and also not like you're trying to drink a glass of water through a milkshake straw. It should just be a natural through. Another term to really hit on is retrohale. That's really when you push the smoke out through your nose. It's not inhaling, but it's letting you taste the flavors a little deeper, get a different profile. I want to tell you, there are a lot of people that love the retrohale. It is not necessarily required to taste cigars. I'm not great at retrohaling. I have a hard time with that. It really depends on the day and how my allergies are doing, if I can retrohale or not. But you can really get a few different flavors out of the cigar by retrohaling.
Yeah, and I will retrohale sometimes, but I don't necessarily feel like I have to retrohale every cigar personally. It's a totally personal preference though. So I just like most of the time to just enjoy the draw normally, but a lot of people get a lot of things out of the retrohale and love it.
Okay, so like the retrohale in this cigar, there's a little bit more pepperiness. Definitely get it on the top of my nose when it comes out. And then during the retrohale, I felt a little bit more down the back of my throat. That almost white pepper out of the cigar that you normally wouldn't get.
Yeah.
Just on the normal draw. So that's definitely one of those things.
Yeah.
So, and finally, we really want to talk about the finish. That's the lingering flavor after you exhale. It's after you blow the smoke out. What is the finish? Is it short? Is it long? What flavors are there? And just like a wine, a long finish or a pleasant finish is a sign of quality. But also on a short finish, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. There's a lot of cigars that I love. The finish is really short, but it's very flavorful. Other cigars sometimes leave a very long-lasting finish, and you can kind of taste it in your mouth even before the next draw, and sometimes even for half an hour after smoking the cigar, and that's not always pleasant.
Yeah, I would agree.
But just like if you're drinking a great wine or a good glass of bourbon or a scotch, you want to judge the cigar on the palate, which is that flavor when you have the smoke in your mouth, the creaminess of the smoke, how the draw's going, how the burn's going, but then also on the finish and what that really is like after you exhale.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a great way to explain the finish. On that note, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will dive into more terminologies.
Sounds good.
We fell in love with cigars not because of the flavors or smoking experience or perceived status, but because it allows barriers to fall between other humans and build deeper connections. For that reason, we've been super intentional to curate a space where people can find community and enjoyment with others, and cigars just happen to be the way we're doing it. For that reason, we are thrilled to be the one and only cigar retail store and lounge in downtown Lufkin. A good story is one of the most powerful tools used to connect with another human. Sharing stories fades out differences and highlights similarities found in the details, or with the storyteller. Over the years, we have seen some of the best stories told over cigars, and thus, new friendships are made, passions shared, encouragement given, and so much more. The impact storytelling has on the human connection is why we've decided to name our store and lounge Stories. Because behind every good cigar and conversation is an even better story.
Source Elevate is a consulting firm that focuses on providing resources, insight, and experience to elevate your performances. Our team's 30-plus years of experiences in executive leadership positions provide the foundation of knowledge that we provide to our clients. Allow us to elevate your company's mission, vision, and objectives over short, mid, and long-term initiatives that drive results and source new opportunities.
Thank you to our sponsors. Before we dive into back into our terminology, let's go ahead and take a look at some of our upcoming shows.
Yeah, absolutely. So next week on September 8th, we're going to talk about cigar pricing, the impact of tariffs and regulation on the cigar industry. And really, this is going to be a more well-rounded conversation around what impacts the price of a cigar. I mean, we might kind of get in trouble on this one, Mel. Maybe
It's
just
true.
a little bit.
Maybe a little bit, but I'm still excited to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on September 15th, we're going to talk cigarcation. So taking a cigar vacation, which Mel and I are doing here in the next few days. And so we're excited to share with you guys a little bit of feedback on what that looks like. We're going to show you some pictures. So make sure you tune in for that episode.
Yes, September 22nd, we are doing Beyond the Band, and we are going to talk about the art of cigar packaging.
Talk about pricing.
Yeah, and yes, how it affects pricing as well for the cigar. And then on September 29th, we are doing the leaf, the layers, and the lore. And we are going to dive into the complex world of tobacco as we uncover the secrets of the leaf.
Yeah, absolutely. Some great shows coming up. And as Mel said, always thanks to our sponsors. And matter of fact, next week, we're going to have a new sponsor coming on board for our show. And we're really excited about that. We always love working with sponsors and new kind of advertisement and different things we're doing. We really enjoy making those, and so really appreciate all that let us do that. Before we jump into the next topic, we're going to talk a little bit about cutting and lighting, but before that, I want to talk a little bit about the burn of your cigar. So we're going to talk about some issues here in a little bit you have with the burn. But when you look at a cigar, there's a small little burn line on here. I like to call the mascara or the burn line. It's really the carbon line of how that cigar is burning. And a lot of people get really critical and judgy if it's a little wonky or if it's got little kind of riffs in it. The reality is that happens for a lot of different reasons. The airflow of the room you're in, the humidity level, if you're talking with your hands, if you have a fan blowing, there's a whole lot of different things. But the main thing is that your cigar continues to burn as you smoke it. What that really means is about every minute or so, you need to be taking a draw on the cigar so it doesn't go out. I love a good cigar. When I set it down, I go inside, pour me a new cup of coffee, maybe run to the restroom, come back out. It's been 4 or 5 minutes, pick it up, and boom, take a draw, and it's still lit. But not every tobacco or roll of a cigar will do that. So you need to make sure you continue to do that.
Yeah.
If you does go out and you need to relight it, make sure you blow through the cigar and exhaust the chamber before you relight it. That'll keep you from really just relighting and creating a little bit more of that burnt flavor to your cigar.
Yep, 100%.
And then your ash. A lot of people look at the ash and talk about the quality of the burn, the quality of the ash, as it dictates the quality of the cigar, how well it's aged or not aged. There are a few truths to that, but the reality is the color of the ash really is because of the minerals that is in the ground, the magnesium and the carbon that is there. It really dictates those different things. The calcium that's in the soil really play an impact to that ash. And so don't get overcritical on your burn line having to be absolutely perfect, or if your cigar ash is all white or it's all dark. It really just has to do with that. And then that's a way for you to help and learn, do I like the flavor of the cigar? If a lot of the cigars with a black ash you're not a big fan of, then you might not like that mineral composite in their growing region.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's great. And sometimes a cigar, too, even in the structure or in the fillers, some will hold a long ash and some won't. Some are meant to be ashed earlier than others.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people will talk about a mixed fill cigar and be very negative about a mixed fill cigar. We have several mixed filled cigars that we make for a few different events, and even like our Torpedo Negro, which is a bundled cigar that we do, or the Garage Force, which is in the Toro size, is a mixed filled cigar. Because we use a long leaf Seco around it to help with burn, and then it's got a really great binder, that cigar holds an ash where people a lot of times would not guess that it was a mixed filled cigar.
Yeah.
So that even is dependent based on how they're finishing out the cigar.
100%. Yeah, so now that we've talked a little bit about the ash and the burn line, let's talk about cutting and lighting the cigar, some of the different cuts, some of the different stuff like that, but also some of the issues that can come up when you're cutting and lighting a cigar.
Absolutely. So up here on the screen, you'll see kind of 3 different diagrams around the ways that you can cut a cigar. And so as you're looking at the cigar, that first one's the straight cut, right? And so straight cut is just exactly what it says. You're just cutting straight across the cap. And as I said earlier, you don't want to cut too deep on there. If you're not familiar with using a straight cutter, there's what's called a perfect cut, which ensures, just like as it says, is you get a perfect cut every time. Next, you have a punch, and that is simply a small rounded end that goes to the top of your cap, and just literally, as the picture shows there, it punctures a hole in the top. And then you have a V-cut. And the V-cut, it really kind of channels your smoke into the center of the cigar, and really just kind of, it opens up the cigar. For me, when I'm tasting cigars, if we're tasting a new blend, I actually like to use all 3, meaning smoke one as a straight cut, one as a punch, and one is a V-cut. And to me, some cigars smoke better cut differently, but it really is preference, right?
Preference, and I think it's okay to mention you might have a season. So when we opened Stories, I was in a season of doing a punch. So every cigar, pretty much every cigar I had was a punch. And I did that for probably 6 or 7 months. And then it got to the point where I was carrying a V-cutter around with me. I lost my little, I had punches everywhere, and they all kind of just, grew legs and walked away, as cutters do when they're by themselves. And so then I kind of switched to a V-cut for a while. And now I'm kind of, I'd say the last 4 or 5 months, I've really been enjoying the straight cut. So a lot of my cigars are straight cut. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of them. And I've smoked multiple cigars in multiple different cuts, and they've all been enjoyable. But you might go through seasons where you like a specific cut for your cigar, and you might want to change that.
Yep, absolutely. So before we get too much further, let's check back on the cigar. We're a little bit deeper in there. I got to take my band off. What are you thinking so far? Are you picking up any specific flavors or notes?
I'm still getting, it has picked up in flavor for me a little bit, just a hair, not super explosive yet even still, but I'm still getting some of those early on flavor notes we had talked about. And I do get a little bit of maybe a spice on the finish. There's a little bit on my tongue, on the top of my mouth. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really just getting a few of these spices, a little bit of that aroma that I was talking about earlier. That rye is still there for me. and really trying to pull out exactly what the flavor is that I'm getting. I actually was just looking quickly a little bit of what am I picking up on that. And I don't know what it is, and I can't find any really good notes on that to see if it's something there. So the best way I could really describe it at this point is probably an coffee and earthiness mix.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like
that.
there's a little bit of a spice there. I wouldn't call it strong or really forward, but it's there.
So when you said getting, some coffee, it almost, I don't know that I necessarily get coffee, but I could see like an unsweetened cocoa. Like when you get that, or if you taste some unsweetened cocoa that you're baking with on accident, it kind of has that cool bitterness to it a little bit.
It is, yeah. I'm excited to see some other people. As you know, Mel, I've been stopped up the last couple of days, so I'm struggling with that a little bit. Just maybe with the cooler weather and then warming back up. I went through a box of tissues earlier today. I feel fine. I just am having allergies. And so that's definitely playing a part. But that earthiness, kind of coffeeness, what I think of it as like if you open a coffee can and you're kind of scooping it out, you kind of get that dust in the air. That's a little bit of that flavor profile that I'm picking up on this particular cigar.
Yeah.
It's very, very good.
Yeah.
I'm
great.
excited to smoke it in the larger size that we have and then try another one of these. We have several boxes to release at Stories here in the next probably next couple of days, I think, that we're going to release that. But I'm excited to have some other people smoke it and get feedback.
It's burning great. It's got really good. The draw on it is easy. I haven't had to relight it at all. So I think it's a solid choice for sure.
Absolutely. So jumping back into the topic of cigar terminology, we want to jump into cigar tools. And so really in the tools of the trade, there's several different things that come with cigar tools, right?
Yes.
A lot of times I call it cigarbage because it's all these different things you can get. And so let's talk about cutters right at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So when you're cutting cigars, there's a straight cut, which is just what it says. It's just a simple straight cut that cuts it across the top as we showed before. But that comes in a single blade, a double blade, and a serrated blade. And then you also have that in a perfect cut. My favorite cutter to use right now is a perfect cut with a double guillotine. It cuts the cigar. It's very easy. They stay sharp a little longer. I personally prefer those ones from Lotus. We have some with Elevated Humidor branded. We have some Stories branded. We have some blank ones. And the reason why is they're under $5. And when it dulls, you throw it away and grab another one. And so you're not breaking the bank.
Yeah.
But you can get really nice ones up to $80, $90 that are really, really nice.
Yeah.
And so really that dual-bladed perfect cut is my favorite right now.
Yeah, and I personally prefer a more standard cutter, but a lot of people right now are also getting into using cigar knives or scissors. We actually have a pair of scissors back here on the table. And then if you watched our McAuliffe podcast episode, some people are a big fan of using their teeth. So,
these are cigar scissors that you would use. Just put on there. I'm going to put on there because my mouth's been on it. But just put on there and snip off just like a straight cut. It works really well. And as we said earlier, the punch and the V cut, you really can't get a perfect V cut or a perfect punch because that kind of defeats the purpose. But again, you can get them from inexpensive $5 to $8 up to really nice $80 and $90 versions for that. And it really just is kind of preference.
Yeah, 100% preference. We've talked about cutters, and also it's good to mention that lighting your cigar also matters. Kevin and I talk a lot about when we light our cigars, we're really toasting it. So lightly toasting your cigar is the perfect way to warm it up and prepare you for the full light. Like, I don't know if you saw us, well, we lit during the commercial, but I lit this very slow. This is the lighter I used. It has it's got a pretty big flame on it, but for me, a single flame is probably one of my favorites because I can pinpoint where I'm toasting without burning the edges and stuff like that.
And for a larger lighter, we have these lighters here in our lounge. A little bit smaller than the torch that Mel has. There's 4 burners on the end, and so it just lights, but it's a much softer, and it gets into that kind of point. You're able to really toast the cigar. In my pocket, I typically carry a single flame or a dual flame lighter. And it's so much easier to me to light a cigar. And to me, using a torch lighter is the right way to light a cigar.
Yeah, I enjoy, I think, the lighter that I've had, that I'm always like, have you seen my lighter? Because again, I put it down somewhere and then I'm like, where's my lighter? It's a single torch flame. And I think too, costs for lighters, it's kind of like cutters. You can get cheaper lighters, and then you can get more expensive ones that range up to $100+.
Absolutely. The workhorse of lighters is the Cyclone by Vertigo. Absolutely perfect 4-flame. $9.99 to $19.99, depending on where you're purchasing it at. But $9.99, you can find it all over the place. A lot of cigar shops sell it for that. And I have several of those. We fly with them a lot. I have them in my car. They're out on the deck, and they just work.
Yep, 100%. I would say too, no matter what lighter you're using, you just want to make sure that you are not torching your cigar and burning it to where it's just not going to give you those great flavors.
Yep, absolutely. Definitely, some people say the cigar just tastes burnt to me all the time. A lot of that's because they're just burning the cigar. They're not toasting it. They're not lighting it. And I'm going to tell you, there's not a right or wrong way to light a cigar, but I am going to tell you, burning the crap out of it is wrong.
Yeah.
You can light it however you want, hold it in your mouth, light it, take a draw. You can toast it. To me, that's where you get the best flavor and most profile. But really light the cigar the way you want, as long as you're enjoying it.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So also, some purists really like to use matches or cedar spills. Cedar spills are the kind of the little small thin pieces of cedar. Oftentimes cigar boxes will have them on top and people break them up. Light those and then light your cigar. And I think those are fine ways to light a cigar. It's just a lot of work. And I don't think you get as pure of a light as you do with the torch.
Yeah, I could see that.
And a couple of things around etiquette with this is, if you're going to be lighting a cigar with a Bic lighter or with a fueled lighter, you want to kind of hold it off, because sometimes it can really impact the flavor of your cigar. And so it's really difficult to light with those. Another couple of things is, when you're smoking cigars, you do not inhale the cigar. You pull it into your mouth, maybe chew it or move it around and then blow it out. You don't want to inhale it. That's a quick way to get green and feel a little sick from the cigar. Also, if you're going to have your ash, you can tap that every few minutes. With your ash on there, you just literally take it to the inside of the ashtray and barely tap it. And so if I'm going here, that's really far over there today. Come there, you just really want to tap on the side. If the ash is ready to come off, it'll come off. You don't really want to pull and knock it off. It just makes more of a mess. Also, when it's time to put the cigar out, you just lay it down and let it rest. It'll go out on its own. See some people go in and they smash it down, and they just smash it like you would see a cigarette. And all that does is push that ash smell, that burnt smell into the air. And that's not very pleasant either. So just a couple little etiquette things to throw in there before we jump into some different problems that you run across while smoking a cigar.
So some terminology of some problems you're going to run into. If you hear someone say the word tunneling, that is when the center of the cigar is going to burn faster than the wrapper.
That's that center picture there.
Yep. And then another one could be canoeing, which is when the side burns unevenly. And so sometimes you're going to need to relight the cigar, and it happens to everyone. I would say too, relighting your cigar also could be in the element that you're in. If we're going on a golf cart ride, most of the time I'll need to relight my cigar at least once. And I think it's because we're getting so much air in our face, in our cigar, and so sometimes that causes it to go out.
Yeah, I was riding the golf cart last night with our son, and I was smoking a great cigar we made for the ENR Towing Association. And so this is our second year making this cigar for them. And I had a pretty good tunnel like that top picture. And it was actually a little bit longer than that. And some people get really freaked out about that. I was like, man, this is awesome. That ash isn't falling on
Yeah.
me. It's great.
Yeah.
But then as we got home, I took a lighter, I touched it up and burned that wrapper and binder leaf. And immediately the ash fell, and that was fine.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you look at those from the top down, you have canoeing, you have a runner there on the side. That happens for a lot of different reasons. The primary reason is a little bit more of the Lajero maybe pushed over to the side, or there's a little bit more, that particular wrapper, how it just aged a little different, so it burns hotter. And definitely there. Then you have the tunneling that you talked about in a little bit of picture there. And then you also have there where it's kind of splitting. You see cigars do that. It's rare, but it does happen. And there's a handful of reasons for splitting. One of the main things that I see for splitting is the stem that's still in the leaf. When you're rolling Seco and Lajero, you only take about a quarter of that stem down the middle of the leaf out. And so sometimes you're have that leaf here, and what happens is, and let me set my cigar down. So you have that stem kind of where my fingers are, and one burns faster than the other, and so it begins to peel away, and you get that splitting. And a lot of people get really freaked out about that. I personally don't. I think that's a part of smoking a cigar. It happens. You have other people say, man, I saw a stem sticking out of the end of my cigar. That's totally fine. Maybe that stem was a little thicker, maybe it was a little drier.
Yeah, 100%.
Nothing wrong with that. However, in the splitting, you just ash that and move on.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
And then down at the bottom, you have the mouse hole burn. Mouse hole burns can be frustrating. And again, oftentimes that's because on the bunch, something twisted in there and it gets pushed up against the side, or there's a little bit more Seco kind of bunched in a ball there, and it just begins to burn. Typically, you can burn past it. If for some reason it's letting your air out, what I'll do, as long as it's not too far down on the cigar, it should be right up around the burn. You can just go ahead and hit a lighter with it and burn the rest of it and move on.
And another thing I just thought of is that we could have covered when we were talking about the different leaves and the body of a cigar, but sometimes you might hear someone say they have a knot in their cigar.
Absolutely.
So why don't you walk them through what a knot in your cigar could be and what the effects of that are?
Yeah, so a knot, that's a great comment. So we're looking back here at this cigar profile here. In the body section there, just between body and barrel, is sometimes real good a knot, and sometimes up about just below the shoulder. And really what happens in a knot is it's when the roller is rolling the cigar. It doesn't matter if they do intubular, which means they're rolling the tobacco, if they're doing booking, which is a single fold of stacking the tobacco, or accordion, where they're kind of doing just what it says. It's kind of a tri-fold stacking the tobacco. No matter how you do that, when you set it down into the binder, you have to roll it. And a lot of cigar factories use a Lieberman to help with that roll, so it's a consistent roll every time. But even in using a Lieberman or hand rolling, sometimes that bunch gets twisted. And once it twists, it can twist twice, and that's where you get that knot. The other thing that happens is you're stacking tobacco. So I'm going to use this band here real quick for an example. So you have your tobacco here, and it's straight, and you're sticking more on there and more on there as you're building your bunch. But sometimes there's this little piece flared up, just like this. And what happens is when you're rolling it, that gets pressed forward, and that can create a knot in there. So when you're drawing on the cigar, it pulls up and no airflow comes through, right? So it's down like this, and then it gets pulled up, right? So it's pulled up, now air won't flow through. But if you blow through it, it pushes it down and air goes just fine. These are handmade products. Even in using a Lieberman for the roll, it's still considered a hand-rolled cigar. It happens.
Yeah, 100%.
One of the things for me that I love, and people get frustrated, I love it. When I see a wrapper coming undone, when I see a knot or a draw issue with a cigar, it makes my heart feel good.
Yeah,
and the
100%.
reason why is because we don't have many of those issues with our cigars that we produce, but they do happen.
Yes.
And seeing them in other brands, I was smoking a very large, expensive cigar, $60 plus the other day, and it had a horrible knot. I worked it with my fingers. I eventually got a draw tool and stuck the end of it multiple times and was able to finish the cigar. But I do love it because it lets me know this is a hand-rolled, handmade product in a luxury industry. Issues happen.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
The right thing to
100%.
do, and I hope your cigar shop is this way. We do it when we're at cutting lights or doing events. We had it happen to us when we were doing the Haraz event. One cigar wasn't drawing very well. We had rolled them a couple of days before to get the starter set going. So we were live rolling there. Actually, Mel did all the live rolling there because I was cutting and lighting so much. But I just took it, threw it in the ashtray, cut and lit him another one, and gave it to him.
Yep.
At a cigar shop, we had somebody have a very, not our product, but a different product a couple of nights ago that the wrapper started to come undone. We should grab them another one.
Yeah.
It happens. It's a part of running a great cigar shop is take care of your customer.
Yeah, especially if it is, I mean, any price point, but if you are smoking a cigar, maybe you're celebrating or something, or maybe you just like that $20+ cigar, there's nothing worse than spending any sort of amount of money on your cigar and you're really looking forward to it, and then it just unravels or falls apart or won't draw. So
yeah, absolutely. So let's transition for a minute, and why don't you tell us about storage and accessories real quick?
Yeah.
That's a little bit beyond cigarbage and into some tools that you really need to make sure to enjoy cigars.
Yeah, so if you're going to be enjoying cigars, or like we talked about, some people like to age them, you need a couple of things to go with the cigar if you're planning on storing them for more than probably
than about a week or so.
Yeah, I would say about a week. And don't get overwhelmed. I was super overwhelmed at first. We live in a very humid climate, and so trying to make sure, when you talk about humidity with cigars and everything, keeping that right. One thing that is going to help you out tremendously, no matter what climate you live in, is going to be a humidor. And that's kind of how it sounds. It's going to keep the cigar at the right humidity for you. It's usually between 65 and 72% humidity. And inside you will have a hydrometer, which is what's going to measure the humidity and tell you what the humidor is at and essentially what your cigar is at.
I just spilled tea all over myself.
Well, at least you're wearing a water-resistant shirt.
Yep, absolutely.
So
yeah, and one thing I want to talk about that 65 to 72.
Yeah.
So at our humidor at our house, we keep them between 55 and 64. To me, that low 60s is the perfect humidity, right?
I agree, yeah.
If you're keeping it at 72, and I put that in our notes when we're building our notes because that's what a lot of people in the industry say, you should only be keeping it over 70 if you're in an extremely dry climate.
Yeah.
You really want to keep it 70 and below. There's actually a fallacy or a myth that's out there that's 70 at 70. I don't agree with that. I think it's completely wrong. As we talk to people at cigar shops and manufacturers around the country, really the globe, that lower humidity is preferred. What you have to remember is by the time you get a cigar, it has been frozen. It has been aged through a low humidity, mid humidity transition over and over again before it gets to you. It has been on a ship that who knows what the humidity level's been on that ship.
100%.
It's been in a UPS or FedEx truck to get it from the distributor or the manufacturer to your cigar shop. All of those things.
Yeah.
Once you get it in a humidor or in a little plastic tub with a Bovita pack, whatever you're using, sub 70. And for me, the perfect smoking is that 55 to 64.
Yeah. And talking about, mentioning the hydrometer, which is going to measure the humidity and tell you, there's two different types of hydrometers. There's digital, and then there's also an analog or a dial. The digital is going to be more accurate, and you can buy, if you have, say you have a dial or an analog humidor, that was your first humidor, was one that was not digital.
Yeah. The hygrometer there was a little.
It was like a little tiny circle that you had to get your magnifying glass to see what it was. You can buy hydrometers, and there are some that you can even link up to your phone, so you'll always know what the humidity is on. The important thing to keep in mind with some of those hydrometers is there is a discrepancy sometimes. It can be plus or minus. Sometimes it's 5 degrees or 5%. Sometimes it's, 0.5. You want to get the one that is the lowest possible. We have so many hydrometers because of our brand. And I noticed at one point in time, our early set, they had like a 10% variance. So it could say 60%, but potentially that could be off somewhere in there by 10%.
Right.
So then I started researching them more carefully and found the best ones I could find were like 2% or 2 degrees, because they will also tell you the temperature, because you don't want it to get too hot in there as well, because it's as well as humidity as you want to keep an eye on the temperature. Absolutely. But those are a couple of things for hydrometers. If you are getting a digital one, they're not expensive. You can get a cheap one.
Absolutely. And you can get a Govee, which is a little bit more expensive one that hooks up to your phone. We've got several of those. We've got the little digital ones. And honestly, I keep one on top of my humidor as well, just to see what is the room at and compared to my humidor. And let's jump real quick into seasoning. We've got a couple quick more topics we want to get to before we end tonight. So seasoning your humidor, really that's prepping it so that it doesn't dry out your cigars. When you get a humidor, a lot of them are cedar lined with other woods around them. Or like if you buy Claro humidors are 100% cedar. We absolutely love those. But you do have to season your humidor. So when you're seasoning it, you can either use a seasoning liquid that you put in there, or you can put distilled water and close it. We like to use the Boveda seasoning packs. Claro, if you buy one of the humidors, they do come with a seasoning kit, which is really easy. The Claros I found have seasoned within 3 to 5 days. Other brands has taken me about 2 weeks. And so you just want to get it to where it gets up around 80 and then bring it back down. Just kind of what I do call burp it, kind of open it up for an hour or two and then close it, bring it back down. Once you throw cigars in there, it'll level out and you should be good to go with that. But there's a couple things you should never do when you're seasoning.
So I was going to say, and some people might argue this with me, but I would say you should never wipe down your humidor with a damp cloth or anything like that.
Right.
Personally,
even if you're using distilled water or glycol, never wipe down. It's an easy way to get mold.
Yes. And if you have mold in your humidor, it's easily going to spread to your cigars, even if they are all individually cellophaned. And once there's mold, again, people would argue with me, but if there's mold on it, I throw it away, unfortunately. Some people are like, just wipe it off. I'm like, I'm throwing it away.
Yeah, it really, if you get mold in your humidor in the wood, you almost have to treat it with ammonia and alcohol and get all that cleaned out. It's really a mess. So the best part is just season it appropriately up front. Do not wipe it down and start off correctly. And there's so many different types of humidors. Just to talk briefly, you've got a desktop, you've got a cabinet style, you have travel humidors that are plastic. You've got leather ones that are wood lined, like the series from Claro. Lotus has them. A lot of different places have them out there. Calibra has a really nice one. And then you have some people that use Rubbermaid.
Yeah.
Right. Or
100%.
just a bag. If you're going on a trip, we flew to Germany last year and I took a plastic container full of cigars. And then I took a really large Boveda bag, which is almost like a 2-gallon Ziploc bag with the Boveda pack in there, and took a bunch of cigars in my backpack. They were fine. The plane didn't bother them. They smoked great the whole time. So there's so many different things. Or any type of humidor that you prefer, Mel, or that you're like, hey, this is one you should get?
So my favorite, and it's also the first humidor I ever got that we were not sharing, was the Claro humidor. I just think they have a great product. I've had it now for 2 years, and I've had no problems with it. I don't have to babysit it. It holds a lot of cigars. The one that I have, they have tons of different sizes, tons of different types, like you were saying. But those are tried and true, in my opinion. I know a lot of people that use them.
Yeah, absolutely. Wrapping up kind of the accessories part, invest in a good lighter, a good cutter, really a reliable cutter. And if you travel, a really small travel humidor, either a 10 or 15 count from Lotus is the perfect size. Or like I said, bring a little Rubbermaid with the Bovita pack in there, works just fine. But those are really the things you need to do. And when it comes to a good lighter and a good cutter, remember that doesn't mean an expensive lighter and an expensive cutter. The most reliable lighter, I called it out earlier, is the Lotus Cyclone or Vertigo Cyclone. It is absolutely the most reliable lighter I've ever used. Their Vertigo and Lotus is cheaper in cutters. They're plastic perfect cuts or they're guillotine cutters. The plastic V cutter, all sub $8, are excellent for you to use. That way, if you leave it on the deck, it doesn't rust. If it gets wet, it doesn't bother it. So, it's really preference, but you just need to get a good cutter.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's jump over and really talk industry and culture.
Okay.
So there's a big distinction between boutique brands, which is small batch, often or sometimes experimental. They're running small custom batches, and mainstream producers who really make larger or consistent runs, but both have their place, right?
Yeah, 100%. And then there is always probably will be an eternal debate as long as we're on this earth and probably beyond, is Cuban versus non-Cuban cigars. Cubans, of course, have the legend because they were Cuban cigars. I mean, everybody, when you hear Cuban, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to have a Cuban cigar. But now I think so many people would argue that Nicaragua, the Dominican Republic, and Honduras, they can now procure cigars that rival or surpass Cubans. And
absolutely,
I would say I'd had a Cuban cigar a long time ago when we first started smoking cigars. I didn't feel like for the price that I would want a whole one to myself at the time because I was such a slow smoker and I just was learning how to pull out those flavors. But we had gone to Germany last year, and so it was great. There was no shortage. Like any cigar shop or anywhere you went, they had Cuban cigars there because, of course, they can procure them there. And there were some. The first one I had a cold, so I did chalk that up to some of the flavors. But I think some of the Nicaraguan and the Dominican that I've had, in my opinion, for me, were better than a Cuban cigar.
Yeah, we were at the Wittlich Cigar Shop in Wittlich, Germany, and we smoked several different cigars there. We had a couple of Cohiba, Sigla number 2s, Sigla number 5, and we actually ended up smoking some of the New World, which is non-Cuban cigars at that shop. And when we went back, their owner's Christian. We smoked a lot of good cigars that he recommended that were better than the Cuban cigars that we tried there.
And so from a terminology perspective, the Cuban versus non-Cuban, someone is going to ask at some point, is that a Cuban cigar? And if you don't know what to say, good rule of thumb, or if you don't know what it is, if you bought it here in America, it is not a Cuban cigar.
Yeah, it's a New World cigar. As Mel was saying, Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, Honduras, Costa Rica, in my opinion, all of them are producing cigars that rival the Cuban cigar. Matter of fact, I'm going to go a step further. I think there's not a country producing cigars today that are not producing better cigars. I think 70, 80% of the cigars, maybe as high as 90% of the cigars coming out of the New World are better than the Cuban cigars getting produced today. That has not always been the case, but a lot of your master blenders, a lot of your master rollers, a lot of your trainers that are training these other countries are all from Cuban origins, bringing that style to these areas that are growing some of the best tobacco in the world.
Absolutely.
And so another cultural phenomenon that's really grown within the cigar culture outside of boutique versus the legacy brands are what we've really considered and called our brand, which is a craft brand. That's a growing terminology. We've said that in the last 5 years, and people kind of looked at us weird, and now it's kind of become an industry term, not because of us, because of other people. And so that's another area. So boutiques really are small batch runs, but a lot of the boutiques are still owned by the bigger cigar manufacturers. And the craft are these smaller, producing less than 500,000 cigars a year. They're newer. They're really trying to develop their blends. But really, I think a craft cigar company is a cigar company that's a smaller company where the owners are involved from choosing the tobacco, going out to the farm, choosing the aged tobacco, choosing the blend, overseeing production, doing the testing, and then going out and representing the company. There are a growing number of craft companies out there. If you see them in a humidor, and maybe you're always a smoker of a Padron or a Fuente, a Perdomo, a Rocky Patel, a My Father, you should still grab and try some of these smaller brands. There are fantastic cigars on the market out there.
100%. So we've talked about a lot of the terminologies for cigars and kind of everything that goes with them. What are some slang terms or terms that people would use when they're referencing maybe community or certain things like that? Nicknames for cigars.
Definitely the cigar community is growing, and something that really became big about a decade ago, but really blew up during COVID time is HERFs.
Mm-hmm.
And HERFs is a group of people getting together, smoking cigars. And what really became popular is virtual HERFs. And they've kind of continued since then.
Yep.
The Sisters of the Leaf with PCA, which is the Premium Cigar Association. Mel was on a ladies' HERF just about a week ago, where there's a bunch of ladies in the cigar industry smoking cigars and talking about different things in the industry. You have cigar groups that really jump out there and get in it. We can see Mr. Bolt out there saying virtual HERF. And so absolutely. And so the virtual HERF is definitely one of those things that has become a huge thing. And where the word HERF came from, I have no idea. Another term that actually annoys some people, which I think is funny, is calling a cigar a stick or a stogie. Matter of fact, there's a great lounge in Houston that I like to go to called Stogies.
Yeah.
But stogie is a casual term for a cigar. A stick is another cigar term for a cigar. I'm not sure why stogie and stick is short for cigar because it's pretty small. I do see some people say, I got to get a gar. That makes a little bit more sense. It's shortened a little bit.
I don't know if I've ever.
Versus, yeah.
People really go to those abbreviations and really take them to heart. I agree
absolutely. With that. And so you hear people out there really talking about a HERF, a stogie, a stick. You'll also hear some people out there really bragging about ring gauge or aging. But it's really just a part of the camaraderie that comes with cigars.
Yeah.
As cigars become more and more natural and more as a part of culture, which I feel like we're in an uptick of that right now, you're going to hear more of this.
Yeah.
But some of what we talked about tonight is what you can utilize to walk into a cigar shop and not feel like a total novice.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we've covered a lot of terms today. We've talked about vitolas. We've talked about the anatomy of a cigar, flavors, smoking techniques, storage, culture. And I think, like you said, it's great to understand these terms, but that's why we also talk about if you don't have a lounge or you don't have a cigar shop that you visit regularly to smoke with other people, it's a great way, again, to maybe help you if you're not feeling confident enough. But even if you want to learn more or start having more conversations with other cigar smokers, a great way to do that is to do that live and in person with people. Because most likely, if your tobacconist will be familiar, if you have questions, they can ask you, or you'll strike up a conversation with whoever's there. And one thing about the cigar community is people love to talk about cigars.
Absolutely. And you might find yourself in trouble. You might have gone in there to have a couple of quick questions and then have a little bit of time by yourself. You might get wrapped up into an hour-long conversation. Because the other true thing about cigars is there's cigar shop time and there's coffee shop time, 100%. And they are not the same. Mm-hmm. You can get lost quickly with a cigar in a conversation.
Yep.
So we do want to challenge you this week. We want to challenge you to use 3 to 5 of these new terms this week. Maybe go into your cigar shop and ask some of these for the tobacconist. Say, hey, I want to try a Vitola normally that I don't smoke, or I want to try a size that I don't smoke, or, just begin to talk to them about flavors and notes, or maybe sit on your deck with a friend and talk about the flavors and the profiles, the aromas, the burn of a cigar. Just try and get used to them and use some of these terminologies. We hope that you learned something today. This was a little bit more in-depth like our podcast last week, and then cigar price is going to be a little bit more in-depth as well.
Yeah.
But we'll get back to the conversational side of things with a guest here in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And so thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share a cigar with your fellow cigar lovers. Before we go, because this cigar is just about done. It was perfect length for this podcast. Now that we're almost done with it, any closing thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, okay, I'm going to be really honest. I was a little underwhelmed compared to the 2024.
Yep, I thought the same thing.
So I want to preface that with I've been fighting a cold.
Mm-hmm.
You have been too.
Yeah.
Or allergies, really, not really a cold. So I need to smoke another one.
Yeah.
And really allow that to give a good feel. I don't feel like I gave it the best representation tonight. It's the 2025. It's being nationally released. Or I said it's coming out on Friday. It was just released on Friday. I apologize earlier. I made that mistake. But you should try it, smoke it, give it a chance and see what you think.
Yeah.
I actually have a 2024 in my humidor at home along with a 2023. And I think what I'm going to do one day this week is smoke all three back to back and compare them. We'll throw those notes out on the Cigar Rebel Facebook and Instagram page, let you guys know. I did want to jump out there, and John put out there, or DPM, and I'm not sure exactly what that means. But he did say that he'd do a reel tomorrow or Tuesday and tag us to get the terms out.
Okay.
And so we'll see exactly what that means for them. But we hope you've enjoyed the topic tonight. A huge thank you to everyone who's come along with us on this journey and continues to tune in. We appreciate you, and we hope that you're learning something last week and this week talking about cigar terms and the different terminology that everyone should know.
Yeah, absolutely. Next week, we will see you to talk about the history of cigar regions. And until then, keep your humidors seasoned, your ashes long, and your palate curious.
Absolutely. See you guys next week.